Okay, welcome back. Let's get to talk about, this Nigeria as well. I want to start from, guys. Although we've talked about this, but it's important we re-highlight it, if there's a word like that, so Nigerians can get to see and get to empathize. As I said, it's something very touching. It's quite difficult to swallow. But over 4,100, the numbers exactly is 4,126 days, according to the papers, after hope not lost on Chibok girls Leah Sharibu FG Tales UK team. At meeting with foreign delegation, National Security Advisor's representative, General Adamu Laka, says efforts to free kidnapped girls still in front burner. And I think we've commented a lot on this morning, and we've given our 2 cents on the matter as far as the issue of this kidnapping is concerned. But just above, just besides the nameplate, we see Senate gives the NMPCL 3 weeks to address 210 trillion naira audit queries. It's just a funny back and forth. They've given deadline, and well, I think it's time for Mr. Ojulari to just go and show up and answer the question. But I know that when I looked at the issues around what do you call it now, the numbers in terms of accounting, I think it's just simple understanding of accounting that needs to be reconciled. But if there are queries to be made, I think they have the authority to do so, to summon anybody. So if the lawmakers are not clear on the reporting sequence of the NMPCL should do the best they can after they've done before to go and further explain themselves. But we're being joined now by Akintunde Babatunde, is Executive Director at CJID rather. Mr. Babatunde, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me, Kaide. Good morning.
Yes, we've laced our voices around the issue of Leah Sharibu. I'm sure you have something to say about Chibok girls as well, but I also tagged along the story of the NMPCL and the back and forth between the NMPCL and the Committee, I think, on Finance over the issue of discrepancies in accounting to the tune of 210 trillion. And there's been the argument whether it's just an understanding of how accounting books are reported or there's really a missing, just an hyperbole. What do you make of it?
Right. Thank you for having me. I think for Leah Sharibu and the Chibok girls, I sort of think that years after, the fact that we are still here and there's been no visible progress when it comes to getting to know where they are or the rescue operation, and the fact that it's also not dominated headlines anymore, because I sort of think the country has moved on, but I don't think their family moved on. I don't think, because for every of the girls that are in captivity, whose family haven't seen or heard from, they're not sure where they are, I sort of think it's an everlasting sense of, sadness and disappointment against the Nigerian state. The fact that the government is saying that they're still working on it, where we've also had too many other Chibok girls, we've had too many other Leah Sharibus, across the country, where there have been abduction, kidnapping. I think it brings us to a major conversation about what really is the Nigerian state doing to secure the country? What really is the Nigerian state doing to make sure that people can sleep, with their all eyes closed? What government is doing to make sure that the country is safe from terrorists, from bandits, and all sort of criminality. So I think it's a moment of national reflection. It's a moment of another question about the kind of architecture that we have to track down abductors, to track down kidnappers, because since Leah Sharibu and the Chibok girls, we've had too many other instances that that some are not even reported anymore. Some are even, it's just normal when people even hear those news. Then today they are just like, yeah, it's just part of. It's now like a normal occurrence, and that's not normal. That's not what the state should be like. In my opinion. So yeah, we hope that one day we would celebrate the return of the girls, and more importantly is that nothing like that would happen in our country anymore. I think that's the most important thing. And then just to briefly talk about the back and forth with NNPC and the National Assembly, I think every now and then, the NNPC has been in the news for all sort of controversy, whether it's about opening their books, whether it's about I mean, way before during the days of NNPC and now NNPCL, it's always been like that. So, one, I'm not surprised that this is happening, but I also do think it also brings us to understand what level of coordination do we have across spheres of government. If the National Assembly is, if the National Assembly that is mandated to provide oversight on institutions like the NNPC. The question is what level of openness, because one of the big issues that leads to this back and forth and all of this controversy is always opacity in the operation of government agencies. So if NNPC does business of oil and gas and there are figures that are not clear, I sort of think before it becomes mainstream, proactive disclosure as demanded by global transparency initiatives, I think that's very important. And if that is missing in the way that NNPC conducted business, because 244 trillion, that's a lot of money that I think could potentially change the course of the country if that allegation is true anyway. But I'm not sure. We don't know. We don't have the details. So I do think that the National Assembly and NNPC should come together and open the books so that there are questions asked, there are clarifications given, and Nigerians will know what's the true picture. I don't think we want a repeat of past situation where there are figures being thrown all around and there are really no evidence to show whether or not these things are true. I think the National Assembly and NNPCL should meet and have very sincere conversation as to what kind of realities do we have where trillions of naira are sort of not accounted for.
Well, indeed, the Senate did meet with the group managing director of the NNPCL yesterday and gave Mr. Bayo Julari, is it 2 weeks now, to report back on those missing funds between 2017, 3 weeks, between 2017 and 2023. And, well, that's fair enough, but let's assume, without conceding, that he has some questions to answer. But might it also suffice that the Senate should also be speaking with the immediate past group managing director of the corporation? Besides that, there are other issues also that border on opacity that we often talk about in the NNPC. The Port Harcourt refinery, for instance, that was said to be on maintenance and shut down for a month, but it's been more than a month since, and we're here to hear anything despite the resources committed to turnaround maintenance. That's just in passing. But let's go to the New Telegraph now, Mr. Babatunde, and there's also another issue that the New Telegraph is bringing to our attention this morning that is equally important. INEC is speaking today, this morning, and it says quality of elections still challenging at local level. And, this is reminiscent of one of the recommendations made by the Patriots in this, amid this constitution review, or a change of constitution process. And that recommendation is to the effect that elections into local government offices are not reliable. Hence, they're calling for a national local government election committee to conduct credible elections at the local level. What are your thoughts on this vis-a-vis what INEC is saying about the quality of elections at the local government level?
Right. Thank you. I think that the conversation about local government and the elections would not be complete if we don't really look at the current configuration of local governance in the country. First, I agree that the quality of elections in local government is challenging. I don't even think it's challenging. I don't really think that what is happening in local government election in the country, I really don't think that could qualify as election, in my opinion, because you have a total decimation of political parties other than the parties that are in power. I mean, the governor's party in most instances. So you really don't see any level of competition that signal democracy or that signal citizen participation, because it's almost a given that whoever is the governor, in very rare instances you don't have that situation, but it's almost given that in any state where the governor is in power, then most likely the local government election will be won by the party of the government in power. So that's challenging, and that's not just even the case. If you look at the FAC allocation that goes to local government, despite court pronouncement, you've seen the disposition of a lot of state governors as to the fact that they're not ready to do that. There's a lot of challenges in local governance in the country. I don't think local governments are fiscally viable. A lot of them are in terrible state. I've seen reports of local government in the country sort of asking for funding for a renovation of local government secretariats. You've seen a lot of primary schools in local governments in terrible situation. So yes, the election is challenging. I really do think the configuration of how local governance is being handled in the country needs to be revisited. And if the court order that guarantees that financial allocation to local government should go directly to them is still being contested, or that is not even happening months after, that speaks to the kind of country that we are in. So I do think that, yes, the elections are challenging. I'm not really sure what we mean by a national electoral committee that would run elections in local government, because if we're saying that local government is the closest government to people, and we have 774 local government, and we also still want to have a national body that would conduct elections at local government level, then that's a paradox, because I do think that this kind of democratic exercise and electoral procedure should be done at the local government level. So if state governments are not, if states don't have capacity, and I say capacity very very carefully, because I don't mean capacity in the real sense. I mean if states are not able to genuinely commit to free, fair, and credible elections at local government level, and citizens are not empowered to really have, choices as to who they want to have in government, right, at the local government level. And if what is happening at the local government level is not selection as against election, right, then I do think that brings us to a big question about the quality of about the rule of law, the questions about the quality of people that we have at running the affairs of states, and then what it takes away from the power of the people. Because I do think that a lot of the challenges, a lot of the governance challenges, security challenges that we have in the country would be reduced if local government function at the highest level possible. But that is not happening. Well, and if the process of electing leaders at local government level is still amateur, is mediocre at those points, then I think it calls for a national conversation. So I do think that we should check what state governments are doing and call state government to account on whatever we have as the reality of local government election and governance in the country.
And this just puts the whole conversation in context, because some will say even the national elections have their fair share of controversies and questions to answer, right? So when national says, well, local government, you have a lot of work to do. Local government also says, national, you have a lot of work to do. And we sort of have that back and forth. But I think one thing is clear, that we need to fix that and stop playing the ostrich. But let's take a look at Vanguard newspaper. Vanguard newspaper is talking politics, and it has a regional slant to it. And this is what you find on the front page. Tinubu reassures North of development as ACF chair, ex-SGF kick. It's a page 5 read. So this has dominated the news ever since the former governor of Kano State, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, speaking about, the spread of projects, and government had to respond, saying, in fact, the North has more, right? But take a look at the explainers. My government will leave no region behind in development. That's coming from the president.
Northern governors reaffirm support for president, call for deepened citizens' engagement. But you see this one, Boko Haram bandits attacks declined under Tinubu Ribadu. North marginalized under Tinubu ACF chair. And you see even Babachir Lao saying Kwankwaso is right, North is marginalized. While Ohaneze, Pandef, MBF also speak about this. It looks like the North is a bride now to sort of get for politicians. What does, I don't know for you, what does data say about this? Because some will say, oh, what about other regions? There's Southeast, there's South-South, there's Southwest, but it looks like all the attention is on the North.
Right. It's. Can you hear me?
Oh yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, the interesting thing with all of this headline, one of this headline about the North is the fact that I think that the question should really because the question should really be why should we have a northern southern slant to development conversations in the country? Why should we have that? In my opinion, a lot of what is happening with what the northerners or what the northern leaders are saying probably should be a question about, you know, are they really incandescent about their own being out of power, or is it really about an average northerner? Because if you review what it is in the country generally, as it were, I think political elite would always play the ethnic, you know, card, you know, for attention, for visibility, and all of that. But you think through what has been the norm over the years. The northern region, the southern region, and any other region have been at the receiving end of irresponsible governance that I don't think has any ethnic slant to it. Think of out-of-school children, you have them in the north and you have them in the south. Think of banditry and insecurity, you have them across board. Think of kidnapping, ransom, and all of those things, that's happening across board. So I really do think conversations about national leadership should be more about the quality of government delivery. Do we have good roads? Do we have good infrastructure? Do we have good healthcare centers? Do we have functioning healthcare centers? Are people safe across board, whether the north or the south? You know, that I think should dominate conversations in forums like this. Not necessarily, because I do think that even the government that was headed by a northerner, we probably need to look at the numbers about are we looking at the numbers of development indicators? Are we looking at, how many people are lifted out of poverty? How many people have access to good health care? How many people do the right job and get the right and the commensurate wages? You know, so the point that I think is happening is that maybe the undertone is that northern elites feel excluded from national leadership. Maybe that's the case, I don't know. But I think that generally the government of the day should think more about how do we think about development across board, because I do think that it's distracting to start thinking about whether or not the south or the north benefit or not. I really do. I'm looking at the numbers. Are people poorer now than 2 years ago? Are people richer now than 2 years ago? Are people, is 1,000 naira worth the same thing than it was worth 3 years ago? Those are conversations we should have. Are people working extra and making more, or is the case reverse? Do we have more out-of-school children now, whether in the north or in the south? Do we have clear layer of security in the north or in the south? Are people happy, with the government? And do they feel that the government is visible? Or are people their own government on their own? Do people, provide, healthcare for themselves? Do they, those are questions that I really think should be happening among political elites. Whether or not we're talking about, we need to look at the numbers, but it's pretty much more about how many northern elites do you have in government or in positions of leadership. But that's not what affects the common man, because at the end of the day, I'm from Oyo State, but I really care more about, I mean, if whether I really care more about the quality of leadership that transcends beyond Oyo State, the quality of leadership that transcends beyond the South, so that people, Nigerians, just don't want much. Nigerians just want a country that works. Nigerians just want to go to work, do their job, make money, and live normal life. Nigerians just want to travel by road from anywhere in the country and be safe. Nigerians just don't want to save for ransom. I really think those are conversations that not elites, political elites from North and the South should talk about, not necessarily, conversations that are distracting, that could potentially be more about, are you bored because you're not in government, or is it much more? Because when maybe probably check the details about whether or not the North is better off or whether the South is better off. Is the country better off? That's my position.
Fantastic. I think we've all agreed on one thing. We just want a better country. The definition of better may differ from person to person. But let's go to Nigerian News Direct. It's a big headline that relates to what you just spoke to, so I may not dwell on it. Renewed hope must not become recycled promises. But what's important is what's above the nameplate, which is the Osun 2026. PDP paranoid of looming defeats. Oyetola replies PDP. That's credited to the Minister of Blue Economy. As Minister dismisses allegation of rigging, judiciary manipulation. There's a lot that's been going on in Osun State that is very, very concerning, and it's the issue of local government administration. As we speak, we have the PDP-led local government administration. We have chairmen who were elected this year, and then the ones that said they reinstated in court from 2022 by the APC. We don't know whether FAC is being released, and if it is being released, who is it being released to? So what do you make of this ping-pong between these political parties at the expense of the people? 2 minutes, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, I sort of mentioned, about local government and all of those things. I think Osun is the battleground, and it's going to be a determining factor. It's always like we're testing the waters as to what the national general election would be like the following year. So I think that the contestations that we have with local government and courts making pronouncements, I think it also brings us back to the point I made earlier about the fact that at the local government level, at state level, we have such level of dysfunction that don't always make it to national headlines, or where people are more bothered about what the president is doing, that we sometimes don't pay attention to what is happening at the state level. Now, I do think that Osun State and the leaders in the state should sit together and first clear the states of controversy with, do we have local government leadership by the APC or by the PDP? I think it's bad enough that we have a looming court case and we have a lot of controversy. And it's also very interesting to see the concern of the PDP in Osun State about the election. To be honest, I do think that the decision about who will become what at the end of the day is with the people. But it then means people need to, one, be very active and follow through. People need to ensure that the elections they follow through the election. People need to make sure that they defend their mandates, and then we need to then call on INEC that conduct election at the state level to ensure that there's a fair playing ground at that level. Because I think that the country would be, there's a lot that will be happening in Osun, and people will be looking at what would happen in Osun as a peep into what's going to happen at the general election. So I think all eyes on Osun, and I really do think that it's condemnable that what we have at local government, in Osun State is also happening across many other states, maybe not as loud and not as controversial as what we have, but the patterns are the same. State government wants to, exert authority on who becomes what at local government level. But missing in action are the people. The people don't even have a choice. They're just spectators. I think it shouldn't be a democracy. People shouldn't be spectators. They should be active.
Yeah, points well noted. I think you've spoken quite clearly. Akintunde Babatunde is the Executive Director at CJID. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program and for your analysis.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we get to that very first conversation for the day. The issues around the elections that are coming up in 2027, and is already causing a huge buzz in 2025 with different regions across some political parties. APC, for instance, now endorsing the president from the Southeast. How much of a difference will this make in 2027? And what's the intent of this eventually? We'll find out right here on the program with our guest. Join us again.